Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. Today, I'm joined by Bradley Hamner from BlueprintOS, a complete system which encompasses all the skills, training, and organizational infrastructure needed to operate any business. Bradley, thanks so much for joining us.
It's great to be with you, Seth.
Let's go back in time just a little bit. How did you get started?
Well, I think a lot of things in business are caught, not taught. And my dad's a small business owner himself in the farming industry. And I knew I always had an entrepreneurial bug, but I didn't know what that was going to be. I started my first business in 2010 in the insurance space. 2015, completely burned out. I was the #1 producer in my business for the first 4 to 5 years. Everything was sitting on my shoulders. And ultimately, I knew I needed to make a change. I just didn't know exactly what that change was going to be. I found myself in Toronto at Strategic Coach, had a chance encounter with a guy that was doing 40 million top line revenue, 5 million personally. And I said, man, how in the world have you been able to get to that place? And he said, systems and processes. And I simply rolled my eyes and said, I've heard that for the last 4 to 5 years. I don't know what that means. And he finally, for the first time, showed me what it actually meant to create systems and processes. And that changed the trajectory of my life for years. Since then, at that point, I was ready to kind of walk away from entrepreneurship. Since then, started or founded 8 companies, currently hold equity in 5, and building an operating system, going from being the rainmaker to the architect and building an operating system has changed everything for me. And so now that's what we help other people do.
Well, that is absolutely incredible. And the longer version of that story should probably be in a book somewhere if it isn't already. So how was BlueprintOS born?
Well, I started off, I never had some desire to get into coaching. I mean, coaching now has gotten, pretty popular. And I would even say that I don't even necessarily now at this point consider myself a business coach. I really kind of look at it as the operational infrastructure consultant. Specifically, how do we design operational infrastructures into businesses so it's less dependent upon the owner? And but my first 2 clients, I was really like an outsourced COO. I was running their business effectively, and was paid pretty good to be able to do it. But I realized that was not scalable. And so then I started to pick up some one-to-one coaching clients. And it was really over that 4 years or so, 4 to 5 years, that my frameworks and methodologies began to get more solidified. And we started to put some language around it, hence rainmaker to architect, what architects use, blueprint. And so we began to kind of realize that, this didn't just work for me and the businesses I was running, but actually started working for other people. And so now that's what we do today.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that. Who is an ideal client for you?
I think you got to be doing at least $500,000 in revenue. I think that first $500,000, we're cheering for you. We want you to be able to get there, but it's really about marketing and sales. You got to be able to have some sort of level of traction. So the majority of our clients, 95% of our clients are doing at least $500,000 to around $2 million. So we really know that space. because we understand where the founder is, where the owner is, and how big the team size is. So pretty much every way we work with is between $500,000 and $2.5 million. We have had several clients, obviously, that have passed the $2.5 million mark that are doing 3, 4, 5 million at this point. But we really, really know that space pretty well. Service-based businesses is primarily who we work with. So exterior remodeling companies, insurance agency owners, marketing agencies, et cetera.
Awesome. And what are some of the biggest problems they're having that you're helping them solve?
Well, simply put, there is one big problem. Now, it manifests itself into a lot of different things. But the biggest problem is that the business is too singularly dependent upon them. Now, here's the thing. For me, this was true, is that it wasn't because things were broken. It's actually because things were right. And so if you go back to what I mentioned earlier, a lot of people who will get a business off the ground is that their personality, their who they are, is what gets lift in the company. But as Marshall Goldsmith has shared with us, what got you here won't get you there. And so what happens is when they get to that roughly $500,000 mark, they start hitting ceilings of complexity. And so you don't have to be in business any amount of time for people to tell you systems and processes. That's what you got to have. And by the way, I have a good team. You start to hear that, but nobody ever actually says, like, what does that look like? And so that's why that encounter for me was so imperative, because I actually, for the first time, saw documents that were beautifully laid out documents, like the fonts that they used, the way the documents were actually structured gave me insight into, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's how he got his, and he actually said this line. He said, I just got my business out of my head. And so once I did that, then I could begin to train other people. And he said, Bradley, look, people can't read your mind, but they can read a document. And so those kind of things began to really make an impact to me. And so that's specifically what we teach now. So I think that, simply put, the biggest problem is the business is too dependent upon them. The pains that they feel are they can't take a vacation without thinking about or bringing work with them. I've got, in my story, I was at Disney World in 2015 before I burned out, and I was with my family, and I'm running a weekly team meeting. I mean, I'm running a simple weekly team meeting, and in the caption of the post that I made on social media, it said, better never stops even a vacation. I mean, that's how like warped my mind was, is like, I'm on vacation. I'm outwardly putting it out there. Like, look at me, I'm running a team meeting while at the Disney Yacht Club, with my family. I mean, it was just complete disarray. Yet we were successful. So it was the fact that things were working, but then ultimately things stopped working because what got me there was not going to get me to where I wanted to go, which led me to almost walking away. And a lot of business owners that we work with get to that point to where they start to have this entrepreneurial quitting fantasy. I literally just I was working with a client yesterday, I've worked with for years. In 2019, they did $90,000 total top line revenue, $90,000 total in top line. In Q1 of this year, they did 284,000 in top line revenue. So they're running basically 90,000 a month at this point is their run
It's
rate.
a big difference.
It's a huge difference. But guess what? One of the owners said, she said, honestly, after last week, it's 3 female founders. They've done incredibly well. They're in the behavioral therapy space, and they didn't know business. They knew how to do what they were doing really, really well, but they didn't know how to like grow a business. And so I don't want to take credit for that, but that's been a lot of success. But she said, honestly, I don't, I'm burned out, I'm burned out. And so we started to work through, like, yeah, what got you to this point is now not the thing that's going to take you to say 2 million and beyond, because they've hit that kind of ceiling of complexity. And so now it's time to begin to make some changes.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know you've worked with a number of companies now. If their identities are confidential, just, hey, ABC company, if you could share with us kind of what the company was looking for, what they were struggling with, how you're able to help, and then that kind of magical transformation you were able to help them engineer.
Yeah. So there's a marketing agency founder, and he also owns an insurance agency in Minnesota that has been incredibly successful. They were doing $400,000 in top line revenue. He himself got really interested in running Google ads for his company, and then he was doing so well with that. People were like, "Hey, what are you doing to do this?" And so he built a company. I mean, he started doing it from one other person. Then he did it for another person. Did it for another person, and now that company does well over. Now at this point, pushing $4 million in top line revenue. And one of the biggest things that we did for that company is we got them really clear on what the vision and the direction was of where they wanted to go. And then they began to reverse engineer everything off of that. So if you read Cameron Herold's book, Vivid Vision, Michael Hyatt's book, Vision Driven Leader, et cetera, all of those books talk about it. But we really believe that every business needs to have what we call a blueprint. And that is three things: your 3-year vision, your 1-year OKRs, and your quarterly targets. So if we talk about what the blueprint is for your business, we're talking about it in the context of those three things. And what's interesting is I'm flying in June up to see them. And one of the things that they're struggling with right now is that their vision actually came true. And so we're going and doing a vision day with them in about a month, specifically to begin to architect what the next 3-year vision is going to be. And so I think that's an example of how powerful one of the concepts that we talk about is, which is what is your blueprint?
Absolutely. And those are incredible results. What else? I know your system is about more than just, hey, we're going to grow your revenue, because in some cases, more sales can make a bigger mess. Talk about, the operational freedom and the time and the stress relief and all of those impacts, which might, for some people, be even more important than the money.
I think it absolutely is. And I want to double tap on, one of the things that you mentioned there is growth. That was one of the fallacies that I had, is that growth and more sales fixes everything. And I'll attempt to try to prove that that's not always the case. If you look at the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list, the Kauffman Foundation has done a study to find that within 5 years, 67% of the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies in America are either out of business or disadvantagedly sold. That is incredibly high number. As a matter of fact, that is a higher percentage than all startups at the 5-year mark. So within 5 years, the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies, which at this point, you've got to be doing $2 million at least in revenue. And, you got to have some pretty incredible growth rates. And within 5 years, half of those, or more than half of those companies, 2/3 of those companies are out of business. So that's one example of where growth doesn't fix all of the problems in business. And to your point, we don't even really necessarily tout what we do to specifically help you grow the company. Now, let's be real here. If you're listening to this as a business owner, there's not a single person that's going to be listening to a podcast as a business owner that says, yeah, I don't want to grow. But I think what that looks like and what winning looks like to a business owner, to your point, can look very, very different. Some people, I have a client also has 2 businesses in Arkansas. And for one of his companies, he said, honestly, I think I just want to grow the minimum amount. Okay. And I'm good with us staying about where we are. But truthfully, I want to go hunting more. I want to spend, what does it look like to spend 100 to 150 hours in this company? I'm really good at where I am financially, but he loves to go hunting. I mean, he's after some of the biggest game in North America, and so that's the most important thing to him in his life. And so, to your point, one of the things we've been doing is basically architecting his week and year in his business to make that happen, not necessarily to grow top line revenue or to be more profitable. At the end of the day, I keep saying this word like architect. And I think that that's why we help the business owner get really clear on what it is he or she wants first and foremost. And then let's go about building that and making that happen.
Well, you sparked something for me. We're on that Inc. 5000 list. What do I need to do? And I believe we have awesome systems, processes, and a great team. What do I need to do to make sure we don't end up on that Inc. 5000 horror story? What are some of the roadblocks I'm going to encounter?
Well, congratulations on being on the list. Obviously, that's a huge accomplishment to be able to be on there. Well, let me give people a tidbit on whenever they start to think about process documentation. Like, how do you do it in a way to where it actually is impactful? It's what we call permanent delegation as opposed to boomerang delegation. I mean, boomerang delegation, you do it and then it kind of comes back to you. So how do you do it and how do you do it well? The very first thing that we use is really high tech called a sticky note and a whiteboard. Okay. That's the very high tech stuff that we use. No, in all seriousness though, using a whiteboard and sticky notes to be able to use and put it on there and say, okay, what's the first thing that happens? How does a customer happen in this business? And then what's the next thing that happens? And then what's the next thing that happens? And one of the easy things about sticky notes is that they can move around. You can move them around pretty easily. Yes, we do ultimately use software called like Miro, or, there's a Lucid Chart. There's a bunch of ones out there that you can then migrate things to it. But one of the very first things that we do is have people to visually map how a customer happens in the business. From there, we begin to really see that there are some places that are really important kind of power stages in the business. And those are the things that we're going to document step by step in a Google document or a Word document. Where I think people get tripped up a lot of times is they try to make the documents just written text without the visual component of it. So if I was encouraging you or the listeners to this, when you think about documenting your systems and processes, I would actually start with a visual representation. I would put it on a whiteboard and literally take a picture of it and put it on the document, and then you can begin to put the text down. That's one of the easiest ways to do it.
That makes a lot of sense. For our folks, our business owners who are watching and listening and want to learn more, where is the best place for us to send them?
We have got a number of free downloads and templates. We've got one of the ones that people love the most is our playbook for creating playbooks. And so if you go to BlueprintOS.com/assets, BlueprintOS.com/assets, you'll see that template and a number of other tools that we use with our business owners on that page, and they can go and check that out.
Awesome. This has been Seth Greene for Sharkpreneur with Bradley Hamner. Bradley, thanks so much for joining us.
Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks everybody for watching or listening. We'll talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.